and what Candace Owens is saying about Israel and them lobbying.
Right out of the gate. I love it.
Who can we turn to and who can we trust?
That's a great question. Look, this isn't a cop-out. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know who you can trust. You can trust God. Okay? Let me ask a question. Who here believes that countries use propaganda, including America? Okay, everyone. So how do you know what you know? How do you know what you know? That's the question you've got to ask. When I was a cop, something appeared one way, and then I heard this, and it appeared another way, and it's usually there's a third. You don't actually know what you know. You know what you see on your screen, and even then, I've seen very convincing videos one way, I've seen very convincing videos the other way. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in Israel. I really don't. I know what I've seen. I don't know what the truth is. Because of that, I refuse to try to weigh in. Because something could appear one way and you'd stake your life on it, and then the truth could come out and you were duped. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had an opinion on something and you were sure of it, and then you found out later through some other information it was actually something totally different? Anybody? All the hands. Don't take the bait. This is why I'm an America First guy. Let that be known. America first. I'm not worrying about these other countries. Let me tell you why. We war against ideologies, not countries. Okay? I'm not talking about going to war. I went to war. That'd be weird to say. My war is not with whoever the messenger is. My war is with the message. Because it could be this country today and this country tomorrow. I can't get distracted with that. As a man, I know that I can stop that at my front door. Okay? So whatever ideology, whoever's pulling the strings, it doesn't matter. It stops with me. And if I see something crazy happening in our school system, I go to the school board meeting and I raise my voice. And if I see something crazy in my city, I go to the city council meeting. Or if it's in the state, I email the state representatives and the governor. Like, you make your voice heard, but at the end of the day, you can only control what happens in your life and your household. And you can only trust in God. Man will let you down. So I just say that to say, I know all the opinions. I know, well, this is happening, this, and I read this. Look, I've read it all too. I've been down the rabbit hole twice. I don't know what is happening. Even in our own country, I don't know what the truth is. That's why I trust in God, and I shield my family from as much of that crap as I can.
But based on what's happened, do you find it hard to know if you're voting for the right person?
Yeah. It's very difficult. Here's what I would say when it came to voting. Let's look at the last election, right? I knew 100% who to not vote for. That made it easy, okay? I'm not electing a pastor. I'm voting for who I think is going to help us get in the right direction. I wasn't looking for perfection. I'm looking for direction, okay?
And then I just have one more.
That's a good tweet. I've never said that before. That was kind of fire. That was not, yeah. Dang.
I just have one more question.
Okay.
So I have.
Let's go.
I have two friends who one was raised in the church, but it was kind of forced on her.
Yeah.
And then another friend who just wasn't really. But they kind of they don't choose to trust what's written in the Bible because they say it's lost in translation. What can I say to my friends? Yeah,
I'll answer that. By the way, you owe $100 to Turning Point for the second question, so make your donation after this. How do you trust it? You know, these are the same people that trust the history books. It's like, well, how do you know what was written? You know, they say the winners write the history. How do you know that's what really happened? Well, how do you know anything, right? As Christians, we believe it's by faith. I believe that God is powerful enough to preserve His Word. And further, when I'm reading the Bible, like God comes and confirms it to me. I've been walking with the Lord for 10 years. I don't just have a theology or an intellectual belief. I have testimonies. I have personal experience, encounters, revelations with God that no one can take away from me. But it all started in faith. And that's the difference with the Christian, is you've got to make the decision, look, I'm going to receive this word by faith. I'm going to believe that this is your word. And you can get argued with like, well, what about, this church took out 4 books and this and that. I'm not getting into all that. I'm going by faith. I've seen the fruit of it in my life. I believe it's the truth, and that's what I go with. I could talk to you more after, but I don't want to do a third question. Just there's a lot.
How there's like degenerate music, degenerate art, things like that, but then you also wanted to preserve kind of that First Amendment and our freedom to speech. Do you like draw a line there, or can you just kind of explain what you meant by that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think if we bring shame culture back, those kind of things they'll be suppressed more on their own because they'll be unpopular. So like Taylor Swift is the second most listened to artist in the globe, and she just put a song out using a word that I'm not going to say because there's children here. And you got young girls singing about it all over the place. Like, if shame culture existed, you would not feel good putting out an album like that and nobody would listen to it. The problem is we have a culture that promotes it. So I'm not against suppression of her music. I'm against an ideology where no one wants to listen to it. It's not popular. It's shameful. Like, you wouldn't even think of putting that out because people are going to think you're weird and no one wants to listen to it anyways. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for your service, and I just want to tell you, you dropped the mic tonight, man. That was beautiful. No problem.
Our children, and particularly families back to this.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. We need to lead by example. We need pro-Christian material out there. We ran an ad campaign. I don't know if anyone saw, but we did a Make Dads Great Again video with daughters and with sons. And, we're making these pro-fatherhood commercials that just grip that part of your heart that words can't. And I think as a culture, we need to promote the family unit. We need to promote traditional marriage. We need to show how amazing it is to be a father and a mother. And it's not going to happen overnight. But through a generation, we can raise children to believe that it's awesome to be parents. And that's not happening in our public school system. So I'm not saying rip your kids out of public school, but I'm saying you've got to understand what they're being fed, and you need to make sure you're feeding them the type of ideology that you want to see in the next generation. So we got to make it popular.
And then my next question is, how do we get pastors to be back on the front lines speaking out against this? Because the last church that I was a member of, the pastor claimed that he believed in the Bible, but I had a conversation with him once, and he said that he doesn't believe that fighting, no matter what side you're on, doesn't do good for anybody. And that's what made me leave the church, because there's fighting all throughout this book right here, and there's fighting all throughout our country's history. So how do we get pastors back on the front lines to fight and stand up for what is right and what's wrong and what's good and what's evil?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the Bible says, "Blessed are the peace makers," right? Sometimes you got to make peace. When I was a cop, we followed 3 rules. Ask, tell, make. We make peace, right? We try to debate, then we say this is the way it's going to go, and if that doesn't work, we make that peace. And it's not through violence, but we're definitely not going to cower back. And the problem is that there was a study done, and I believe it was 70% of pastors right now, if they could find a different job that would provide for them financially, they would leave the ministry. So that's 7 out of 10 pastors don't actually even want to be there. So what's their conviction to say something that's unpopular and probably going to drive away most of their church because they've been preaching a cupcake gummy bear Jesus? They don't want to do it. They're just trying to, get along. Go along to get along. So I think we need a lot of new pastors. We need people to start speaking out. And listen, here's how we stop the epidemic in the church. If you go to a church and you've got a pastor who's preaching something counter to the Word of God, or you feel like they're being weak, you go talk to the pastor. Don't leave silently. I think that's cowardice. You go talk to that pastor and you ask him a question with respect and with love in your heart, and you hear him out. And if he is not willing to bend to the Word of God, then you take your family and your tithe and you go to a church that will. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. So I do disagree with a lot of things that you say, but I'm not really here for a debate. I just wanted a couple clarifications on different perspectives that you had and different definitions that you have. So one is you state that you don't believe in hate speech. That's correct, right?
Right.
Okay. So I wanted to know what your thoughts were surrounding Charlie Kirk's death with the jokes and the criticism and all that surrounding his death. Do you not consider that hate speech? And if not, what do you consider it?
I reject the idea of hate speech because then it becomes something that we're trying to regulate. I think it's just despicable, wicked behavior from evil people. But I'm not going to categorize it as hate speech because then it becomes this thing that we need to deal with. And that's why Pam Bondi, I think, the day after Charlie died was like, we need laws against hate speech. And that's Charlie would have freaking hated that. That's stupid, right? So there's just speech that's mean. I mean, they're words.
So do you
Just words.
think people who are criticizing and making jokes about his death, do you think that they don't deserve any consequences for that? Or
No, I didn't say that at all. I'm against hate speech from a government level. Don't ever mistake that in free speech with bearing the consequences of your free speech. Free speech laws would cause the government to come in and impose some type of regulation, penalty, fine, imprisonment, whatever, based on what you say. That has nothing to do with you say something outside of alignment with your job or your boss's values and they fire you for it or you get kicked out of school. That's called playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes.
Thank you. And then my second question was, could you define Marxism and where that term came from for those who might not know that in the audience tonight?
I mean, I would just Google it. I'm not a historian or anything. I know what Marxism does. I listed off the many different ways that it's tried to infiltrate. But basically, it's this reduction of classes, and it's this idea that, it's completely against the way that we live right now. It's not a democracy. It's not a capitalist society. It seeks to disrupt and destabilize a nation. So if you want to know what Marxism does, that's the aim of it. And usually there is one who rises up to become the leader, the dictator. And every nation that has tried to implement socialism or Marxism has gone in a horrible direction. So, I mean, that's what I would say about it. But I'm not going to stand up here and act like I know the Webster's dictionary definition.
Of course. I wanted to know specifically how you would define Marxism.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if you were here for the talk, I kind of already went over that.
Okay. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks for being respectful, too.
Hello, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'll just voice my opinion on your talk. It sounds to me like you hate your neighbor and that you're ashamed when your fellow American who happens to be trans, happens to be gay, happens to be black or a woman, you're ashamed when they go and use, one, their free will and their God-given rights to go on the path that God put them on. If a trans person's path is to be in the White House, then it's to be in the White House. And then I also think that you seem to want to go back to some Puritan 1960s culture where I guess we were living the cultural dream or whatever. I want to make note that that was the best time for people of your position who happen to be a white, straight Christian man. Black people did not have the right to vote. Women couldn't open a credit card. It was a great time for people who like yourself, but I would argue that it's not those aren't ideals to get back to because not all of us were, one, living this nation's ideals or living under God's ideals of equality and free will.
Yeah, and thanks for your comments. That's a popular response. I want to go back to where whites were running everything. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is pretty simple, actually. I'm not that smart that I'm thinking that way. I remember growing up, and on TV, you would rarely hear a cuss word, and you wouldn't see nudity at all, and now it's commonplace. We're heading in the wrong direction. I want to go back to where, people were ashamed to be sexual in public. And I'm not talking about the sexual movement, in that time frame. I'm talking about back before that. Back, don't ask, don't tell. Back when, we actually had some pride. Back when people dressed up to go places. Back when, we were respectful as a nation. I'm not talking about going backwards in regards to segregation or anything like that, clearly. And to respond to your first point, I'd be interested to ask, why do you think I'm ashamed of my neighbor or hate my neighbor?
Well, it's the type of rhetoric when you say, oh, if I saw a man going into a restroom, I'd tear them out. Well, one of these people in here might just see a trans person walking around and suddenly feel hate in their heart towards that person because of your words.
Well, that's them. That's not me. I didn't ask anyone here to hate a trans person. Let me ask you this. Do you think that it's okay for a man to go into a woman's bathroom?
I think it's a leading question, and that you're
No,
trying
it's
to
a,
corner
it's a
me in
yes
some
or no,
way.
honestly.
No.
Okay.
It's a bathroom, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have gender-neutral bathrooms already. It just says bathroom on the door. So, I mean, like, I don't
Usually
think
the
it's a big issue.
gender-neutral bathrooms have like one toilet in there. I'm talking about a man going into a woman's bathroom. If I saw a 10-year-old girl go into a woman's bathroom and a man followed her in there, would you feel comfortable about what might be happening in that bathroom?
I think you're trying to. There's a difference between like an actual man and someone who's transgender going into a bathroom. If you see a big brolic
Okay,
man
so what? Yeah,
going
what's
into
the
a bathroom,
difference? Yeah, good question. What's the difference?
it's hard to tell at times. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen a lot of transgender people, and they look the way that
I
they
know
do.
a man when I see a man. I know a man when I see a man. And I'm not going to wait for that little girl to come out and say, that man did this or that man showed me that. I'll go in and find out if it's a man. And if it's not, I'll say, ma'am, I'm very sorry. I ask your sincere forgiveness.
I think it's
right?
a non-issue that you're bringing up. I don't think
I don't
that
think
this
so.
happens where
I think
transgender
I
people
think
are
a
going
grown
into
man in the
bathrooms
bathroom
and-
with women. Okay, let's let the people decide. If you're a woman, I want
Biased
you to
crowd.
raise your hand if you'd be uncomfortable with a man coming into your bathroom. Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of all women right now. They don't like it. I'm a protector of women.
I just don't think
Look,
it's
here's
something
what
that happens.
let me finish so we can go to someone else. I am great with someone who wants to be trans and figure it out on their own, but when it begins to infringe on the safety and the protection and the free will of other people, that's when I get involved. Okay? So if you want to be trans at your house or in the hallway or whatever, or in your appropriate bathroom, or you want to go into a gender-neutral bathroom by yourself, I think that's wonderful. If there's a trans bathroom one day and all the trans people want to go there, fine. But when a man walks into a woman's bathroom, now you've made it my problem. We need protectors in America. I'm willing to be one of them.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm a Christian, but
Heck yeah.
my question is, why do you think trans, and I don't know if you extend it to gays, but why do you think they shouldn't hold political positions of power?
Trans people?
Yeah.
Because they have a mental disorder. And I'm not being mean. I mean, let me ask genuinely, okay?
Yeah.
Let me ask genuinely. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Should someone with a diagnosable mental disorder hold a position of power in our country? They don't even know what body they're in. They think they're in a different body. I'm not saying this to talk down on them. They are so confused. I want you to imagine that you're a man and you look down and go, I don't think I'm a man actually. I need to cut this thing off. That person should not be in any form of leadership. They've got some personal things they need to figure out. I think it's reckless to put a transgender person in any form of leadership whatsoever. And it does not extend to gays, because gay people don't have a mental disorder. They just have same-sex attraction and they're acting on it. I served with incredible people who were homosexuals in the military, who are Black Hawk pilots, when I was on the job as a cop, who I trusted with my life when we're going into a room, but I would never have gone into a room with a transgender person. Never. As a cop.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You alluded to this earlier, but the late Rush Limbaugh used to encourage conservatives to encourage their kids to go into education and journalism to try and fix some of the problems of the culture. But as Christians, you mentioned that a lot of us withdraw from the culture. But we've got a lot of people in the room right now who are thinking about a career path. Do we want Christians to become museum curators and librarians and movie makers and TV makers and show makers? Don't we want people to be in the culture that are Christians?
Yeah, and if I explained that wrongly, I apologize. I'm talking about young kids. We're homeschooling until they get to the age of about high school, and then we're going to make a determination. Like, are you ready? Are you ready to go be a light? I'm not going to throw my son to the wolves if he's not ready, right? But if he's like, Dad, I want to go, like these kids are lost, I want to go there, I'm going to send him there. And these kids, they're already out of that. Now they're in college, you're an adult, you're beginning to live on your own. We are called to occupy until he comes. We need to be in every sphere of influence. We need to be in the public square. We need to be in positions of power in politics. Because if we're not, then those who are driven by the flesh, or worse, by the devil, are the ones holding these positions. And that's why we're in the state that we're in. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. But when we're talking about those formative years, Vodi Bakum, rest his soul, and he's in heaven now, but he said, you send your kids to Caesar and wonder why they come back like Romans. I'm not going to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do apologize for how I look right now, but because I look atrocious. I'm dressed as a skeleton in basically a debate, so please ignore that. But I do have a question, kind of the main point of your against transgender ideology. Why is it always against male to females and not females to males? Given the I don't want men in women's bathrooms, of course, that'd be odd. But if a woman comes into the bathroom and I cannot tell myself that it's a man, I don't know if my uncomfortability would even be there because I wouldn't be able to tell. And just to do the same thing that you did, can the men in the room raise their hand? How uncomfortable, or would you be uncomfortable if a female walked into the men's bathroom? I'm so sorry, I'm so shaky. Pretty much everybody. So, given that, let's say there's a guy that walks into the bathroom. You cannot tell the gender. It looks like a man. You're not really questioning it. Turns out it's a woman. What are your thoughts on that? Same thing with a man walks into a woman's restroom, but looks like a woman, but you can't really tell. Like, it's just all on hypervisibility and hyperinvisibility. I don't hear this argument often as people who are against transgender ideology when it comes to, female to male transitioners
Sure.
rather than male to female transitioners.
I appreciate the question. I think it's a fair one.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Men who raised your hand previously to her question, will you put your hand back up? Okay? Now, I want you to drop your hand if the reason that you raised it was because of something other than you thought you were going to become a victim. So if your uncomfortability had nothing to do with, I'm about to get victimized by this woman, go ahead and put your hand down.
And that's a fair point.
Maybe it's a confusing question. The point is, I believe that the men who raise their hand, including me, I'm uncomfortable, but not because I think I'm about to be victimized.
And I can see,
Right?
how
Okay, I
that
said it right that
is a
time.
very-
I told you, I'm
that's a
not
very
that
good
smart.
point, actually, but
So
at
the
same-
reason is,
We can't see,
hey,
sorry.
Lonnie, I can't see. Thanks, brother. I just met him, by the way, so that's kind of awkward. The reason is that I don't want a woman in my bathroom,
Yeah,
right? But it's
of
not
course.
because I'm going to be victimized. And when we look at men going into a women's bathroom, that's a whole different issue entirely.
It's because of the fear of being sexually assaulted. I completely understand that. I'm a sexual assault victim myself. But
I'm really
given
sorry to hear that.
life goes on. But given the idea of, once again, if a transgender woman walks into my bathroom and I have no way of knowing and nothing kind of alerts me of that, no predatory behavior towards me or any other fellow woman in the bathroom, then really why is it a problem? I feel like it basically goes on the idea of that trans women can't really pass in the idea of how women are viewed in society. And I do agree that there are some transgender people who do play dress up, or quote unquote transgender
Every
people.
transgender person is playing dress up.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. But there are also religious reasons involved for your ideology and my ideology. I'm an agnostic. I don't really tend to believe in God. I kind of need proof. I don't see heaven or hell as something that I really believe in. But then again, I'm someone who would need it to be proved to me. But then, like, I'm just a very scientifically oriented mind. Given another thing with the transgender argument, what about intersex people? We already mentioned that gender-neutral bathrooms are a thing, but when it comes to the idea of intersex people who are born with mutations on the XY or XX chromosomes, what do they do then when there's no accessible gender-neutral bathroom?
Yeah. Does an intersex person have a mental disorder?
No, sir.
Okay, so we don't do anything. We just do what we've always been doing, right?
But when it comes to that, we might accidentally view intersex people as someone who is attempting to intrude on a bathroom.
Look, I'm not saying it never happens, but I've never heard of that happening. Okay? I don't ever recall that being an issue growing up. No one ever taught me as a kid, hey, sometimes someone with, different issues with their genitals might come in your bathroom. Like, that didn't happen. Now we're living in a day where people have a mental disorder. And so the premise of your argument, and I want to make sure we get to everyone, the premise of your argument is, I hope that this person doesn't have bad intentions. And the premise of my argument is, I'm going to prevent any instance of you ever being able to have bad intentions because you're not allowed in a women's bathroom if you're a biological male. So I'm not going to base my life off of a hope. Well, maybe they're coming in and maybe they're just really being a woman and maybe they're not predatory. Yeah, I'm going to say it's not going to happen. A biological man, which, by the way, most of us can pick one out. Most of the time, okay? We know because we were created. You know who really can tell? Kids. Freaking Miss Rachel is woke, by the way. It's a show for kids on YouTube. And my son was watching one of the videos when we realized we need to stop watching Miss Rachel. And he goes, man, that girl looks funny. Because she was trying to be a guy. Like, he knew. He's 3.5 years old. He knew. We know. It's ingrained in us. Something's up with that person. Something's off with them, right? It's a mental issue, and we should not permit them to be in a place where they can victimize people, which they have, by the way. We've seen this happen. So I'm going to be a protector of women, and I'm going to say no. I'll take a hard stance on that. That's like... prove to me why the sky's blue. Like, you don't think that you're a guy. I'm not being mean. I mean, if you're a guy and you have male genitalia and you think, I think I'm actually a woman, like, there's something wrong in your brain. Yeah. Thank you for your question. I appreciate it. I hope I don't come off as rude. I'm just direct. We don't have a lot of time in life. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's true. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Dina. I'm from Cuba.
Hey.
I'm going to say thank you, to your organization, Turning Point, to Charlie, because I left Cuba because Cuba is under the ideology Marxist that she asked you about, and I can let you know a lot about, but I want to let you know the guys here that are studying, that are open their minds, that I came from the future. Marxist is bad, really bad. I tell you, for a country with 11 million of people and 6 million almost living outside my country in this moment, then if you don't know what is Marxism, is that half of your population out of the country because you don't agree with what is happening, and the other 50% that is still in the country trying to leave or being silenced.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Just living proof right here of the effects of a Marxist ideology.
First off, thank you so much for coming. I know that I greeted you earlier. To all the men that have been struggling with all sorts of crap like pornography, what do you have to say to them?
Stop looking at porn. I mean, honestly, that's step one, you know? Is it still working? Okay. Yeah, one, just stop. Like, stop looking at it. But two, you know, there's an old saying that idle hands are the devil's playthings. Men fall into traps and temptations and all these things when they lack vision. You have to create a lifestyle where that stuff doesn't fit anymore. Like when I started powerlifting like years ago, my life had to change. I had to change my diet. I had to make sure I got enough sleep. I had to make sure I was hydrated, right? Like my whole life was surrounded or was catering to my powerlifting and adding to my total and prepping and going through this and getting ready on my program for a competition. And because of that, I didn't have time in my life for other things. Like when you've got vision and when you've got determination and when you have something that you're trying to conquer, these things in your life, they just don't fit anymore. And a lot of guys lack vision. They don't do something that they are trying to master, right? Something that like keeps them up at night. Like, man, how do I get better at this? And because of that, they fall into the trap of just doom scrolling and looking at porn and just getting caught in this cycle. You've got to break out of it. And a man who's driven with purpose is not going to fall victim to that kind of stuff as easily as others will. I will say this finally, you need brothers in Christ around you that you're meeting with on a regular basis and just hanging out with and spending time with that can look you in the face and ask you how you're doing with that issue, that can keep you accountable and that can encourage you.
And I'm happy to say that as of today, I'm 35 days porn-free.
That's amazing.
I just want to start off by saying it's absolutely refreshing to have someone come in here and drop hard truths the way that you did.
Thanks, man.
About the shame and the pride and all that kind of stuff, because I'm 39 years old. When I was a kid, I mean, if you didn't pay attention, you got smacked upside the head until you paid attention. You didn't get Ritalin or Vyvanse or Adderall or any of that kind of stuff. If you were overweight, you didn't get Ozempic or something like that. You went out and you played sports. You played outside with your friends. You did something about it.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm leading up to is, how much do you feel like the pharmaceutical companies are responsible for kind of creating that mentality of complacency? Because, I mean, you could take a pill for just about anything these days. And it makes the parents lazy because if their kid's acting up, they can just go to the doctor and get them prescribed a pill for pretty much anything. We're probably the most overly medicated group of people in the history of the world.
Yeah.
So just I just wanted your opinion on that.
No, that's great. You know, just to give you an idea of like the pharmaceutical industry, just look back at what happened during COVID. You know, look at the propaganda, look who got rich. They say it all the time and it's for good reason, follow the money, right? Hospitals do not benefit off of you being healthy. The pharmaceutical company does not benefit off of you being healthy. That's why when you look at the food pyramid we were given in school as kids, that is the stupidest food pyramid I have ever seen. The majority of your diet should be grains and pasta and bread. Like, that is dumb, right? The best I've ever felt in my life is when I eat steak once or twice a day and fruit and drink grass-fed milk at the minimum, if not raw milk. Like, we have to begin to question everything that we've been taught because these people are banking on the fact that we're going to take the easy and the comfortable route. My friends and I were talking about this before. You know, thousands of years ago, these scribes, when we talk about the Gospels and the Bible, they could recite pages and pages and pages and pages of text. They were so smart. And now, kids can't memorize anything because everything is so fast, and now I can just go to AI. Soon we're going to lose the ability to look things up. We won't know how to look things up. You know, it's ridiculous. But I want to encourage you in a way, too. Think about how many songs you can remember. How many songs could come on the radio and you're like, oh, and you could sing that song. You could play the beat. Probably thousands of songs. We have the capability, but culture has conditioned us to just want the quick, the easy, the comfortable. It's got to be fast. And the moment it's not fast, the moment it's 720p instead of 4K, we're complaining. Like, this is the culture that we're living in. And so I think we need to go back. We need to get off of the iPhone Bible. We need to go to a paper Bible. Like, we've got to go backwards as many ways as we possibly can. And when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry, the one thing they won't tell you is like most medical issues, this isn't medical advice, just go look it up. You know, you have the ability to research, believe it or not. The reason people become doctors is because they did research and they were taught by people who did research, and now they have a degree. You go do the research and you'll see that many issues in the body start in the gut. They start in the gut. You get inflamed and all of a sudden you have all these issues. You change your diet and you can get rid of a lot of issues that you've got in your body. My wife has epilepsy. She changed her diet. She saw a dramatic change in her symptoms. No doctor would ever even breathe diet. They think about a cocktail of different medications to get you on because they benefit off of your suffering because they have a recurring patient.
They want to treat you, not cure you.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being here. You've talked about like the moral degradation of society over the past 60 to 75 years and kind of some of your insights into why that is. What do you think the impact of social media has been on that? And as Christians, how do you think we need to interact with social media and what should our relationship be?
Yeah, good question. I mean, ideally, if you could be off of social media, I would. If I could be off of it, I would. You know, I look at it as a sacrifice because God's allowed me to have a good-sized platform and I can spread truth. But in reality, I wish I could totally unplug. Social media has seriously corrupted our minds. Even though it's being used for good as well, overwhelmingly it's being used for bad. And that's why they call it doom scrolling, right? A lot of people do it. If you look at your phone, most people they say the average Gen Zer spends about 7 hours a day on their screen. I think you could read the Bible in like 70 hours or 68 hours. So a Gen Zer could actually read the Bible every 10 days from cover to cover. This is when you see this, you realize how much you're being robbed of like learning and growth. My advice for someone on social media, don't be a consumer, right? Maybe be a producer or go there with intentionality. Like, hey, I'm going to clean up my feed. Like, I'm only going to follow these accounts that encourage me, that inspire me to be better, that lead me closer to God, not closer to sin or the world. I'm going to unfollow everyone else, or follow my friends. I'm not going to scroll on the explore page. Like, you have to go into social media on purpose or you're going to get lost. You'll get lost scrolling, or you try to go to the gym and you're like, oh, I'll just scroll between sets. And if you actually keep track on your watch, you just wasted 8 minutes. Like, it just goes like that. And so, look, life's too short to waste it scrolling on your phone. I've started reading a book between sets when I'm at the gym. So I would just love to see us disconnect as much as possible. We're the most connected and the most disconnected generation in history. Social media is fake connection. It's not real connection.
I'm a journalism minor here on campus, and I've recently been doing a story that has turned into the need for discussion on college campuses and how we've actually gotten away from that discussion. And I've noticed today how great you've been at talking with people. You've actually prioritized people who didn't agree with you. And just why is it important to you to have these conversations on campus? And how do you think we got away from universities being a place where ideas are supposed to be shared, since that was the original purpose of universities?
Yeah, I think number one, we're killing people we don't agree with. So that should stop. That's what Charlie was doing. And that's what's been done since the beginning of time. I mean, think of what philosophers used to do. They'd go in the public square and they'd hold this public discourse. That's how we get smarter. That's how we learn. And we have to continue that. And I love what Charlie said, and I'll echo it. When we stop talking is when we start fighting. When we stop talking, that's when the violence begins, because we begin to look down on people who we don't share the same view with. And when you begin to look down on someone, you begin to dehumanize them. And when you dehumanize them, then you can say things like, well, I'm glad he's dead. No one misses Hitler. And it just shows that we already had our minds made up about someone, that we didn't listen to what they were saying. We didn't respect the fact that they have their own opinion, that they had their own walk of life and a reason that they got to that very opinion. We forgot the fact that they are children of God. And we got to keep these conversations going. So yeah, I welcome all opinions. And the only thing that I'm solidified on for the most part is that Jesus Christ is the only way to God and to be saved. Most of my other views, if confronted with a more compelling truth, I would change my position. I just have yet to be encountered with that truth up to this point.
Thank you for coming out, Mr. Winnings. If you were going to lay out the ideal path, Barney style, for a young man in college, what would that be? Like if you could distill it down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be kind of the things I alluded to earlier. Have a vision, have an idea of where you want to go, and maybe an idea of how you're going to get there, and then do everything you possibly can to become that man. And thinking in mind of becoming the priest, provider, protector for a woman one day. And when you do that, you're going to go, man, well, I need to be a man worthy of a woman of God. And that means I got to take care of myself. That means I got to try hard. That means I've got to, have good hygiene.